So today's educational speaker is Jessie Taylor. Jessie Taylor is co-founder and director of education at the Mindfulness Center, a nonprofit health institute in Bethesda, Maryland, offering charitable, educational, and scientific research programs in mind-body practices. As the director of education, Ms. Taylor oversees program development, accreditation, and is a lead faculty member, as well as a yoga and meditation instructor. Ms. Taylor has developed and conducted wellness programs for numerous area corporations, hospitals, schools, U.S. government agencies, and the U.S. military. As a speaker and educator, she brings a deep understanding of the current scientific evidence basis for mindfulness practices, along with practical and yet profound techniques for improving our own health, well-being, and work-life balance. Let's welcome Jessie Taylor.
Thank you so much, Christina. I greatly appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here with you all today and to speak with you all on a topic that I think is really relevant just in general in our lives and work and for our health, but also especially important right now with everything that we're facing going on in the world today, facing certainly additional stress challenges as well as potential health challenges. And so I'll be talking today on the benefits of mindfulness and how it can benefit both our health and our sense of well-being, as well as our productivity at work and our leadership and even our speaking skills. And I'll speak to this from the scientific perspective because that's my background and the background from our organization. Our founder is a neuro research scientist by background. And so I appreciate that opportunity. And as Christina said, I'm one of the founders and the educational director at the Mindfulness Center. Our storefront's located in Bethesda, but we are moving more and more of our programs online virtually. So there's plenty of opportunity to check those out at our website, themindfulnesscenter.org. And I'll also discuss further resources available to you all. So I'm going to screen share now to come into my slideshow, but I'd also like to mention if anyone has any questions, I'll take time for questions both at the beginning just to make sure I get to talk on everything that everyone's interested in, as well as at the end, but feel free at any time to drop a message in the chat box and I'll try to be monitoring that as well. Okay. So let me come to sharing my screen now. So before I do get started, as I mentioned, I would love to hear from any of you if there are any questions as we go into this that you'd like me to be sure to address on mindfulness. As I mentioned, I'll be discussing how it can benefit both our health as well as our work and productivity and work-life balance. But any particular questions, and I'm actually not sure how to monitor the chat while I'm in screen share. Oh, there it is. Okay. So feel free to drop that there or just speak up if you have any questions as we get started. So our topic for this particular discussion on mindfulness is how living in awareness creates health and happiness. And I think that it was so great that I missed which woman said it, but someone mentioned how one of our keywords for the day is observation, because really mindfulness is about self-awareness and developing the ability for self-awareness and observation. So we'll see how that comes to play too, and how this developing the skill of self-awareness and observation can help us to live a happier, healthier life. So we'll be taking a look at a definition of what actually mindfulness is. This is a term that we've all heard and it's been tossed around in this meeting so far. So I know we're all familiar with this term and you've even mentioned a number of practices that you all engage in personally. But do we have a very good working understanding of the definition of mindfulness and what does it actually mean when we throw this term around? And then as I mentioned, we'll take a look at the benefits of mindfulness from this perspective of the science and physiology, and then we'll get to try it out for ourselves as well. So what actually is mindfulness? To understand what mindfulness is, it can be really helpful to understand what it's not, to understand it from the perspective of what the opposite of mindfulness is. So the opposite of mindfulness could be considered stress. Is this something that anyone's ever experienced? Just give a raise of your hand if you've ever experienced stress. So I think, yeah, many of us, right? Unfortunately, it's a little bit all too prevalent in our daily lives. We experience it, if not every day, even all day long. So the state of stress is actually a survival mechanism. It's meant to warn us of danger. It's could also be known as the fight or flight response. So basically, our brain is saying that there is something that is a threat, and we need to figure out how to address that threat. And our brain initiates a series of mechanisms throughout the nervous system aimed at immediate survival, what we might call that fight or flight response, preparing ourselves to either run or fight to face this challenge. And so in the stress response, we see these neurological mechanisms aimed at preparing us to either run or fight. We see an immediate increase in our breathing rate, our blood pressure, and our heart rate. We see a suppression of the immune system, because if we needed to be running or fighting for our lives, we wouldn't need to be, putting energy into fighting off a cold, for example. We see a decrease in bone formation, because similarly, we don't need to be absorbing the maximum nutrients from our foods and assimilating them into our bones if we need to be putting energy into running or fighting. We see an inhibition in digestion, reproductive hormones, and memory. The brain is basically saying we need to be ready to run or fight. We don't need to be putting energy into optimally digesting our food. And this is why in a state of stress, whether it's just a very minor stress or much larger stressors, we can immediately feel that inhibition and even shutdown of the digestive system. This is why, like in an instance of small stress, we might experience what we call butterflies in the stomach, a little bit of nerves, and that's basically the brain's beginning to shut down the digestive system. And then in instances of much more extreme stress, we would see the digestive system shut down completely, as we would either lose the contents of our digestive system literally one way or the other in that extreme situation of stress, as the brain just completely shuts down the digestive system. We see an increase in cholesterol and sugar in our bloodstream. As our body is preparing to either run or fight, it wants to cling to that sugar for energy. And I had a woman say to me recently, well, wow, this is really eye-opening, because I've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and doing everything that the doctor tells me to do. I'm watching my food intake and my sugar intake. I'm exercising. I'm taking the medications. But my blood sugar level is just still so high. But I realize that I am stressed all the time. And, could that be why my blood sugar levels just are not, going down? And I said, absolutely. That's your brain saying that it just needs to cling to that sugar in your bloodstream, because your life depends on it to run or fight. So we can see how chronic stress is immediately beginning to have an impact on our health as well as chronic disease. We see an increase in inflammation in the stress response, because, again, our brain is preparing us to either run or fight and possibly receive injury. And inflammation is the way that our body responds to injury by bringing white blood cells to help fight infection. And chronic inflammation is, in fact, known to be, at the very least, an aggravating factor, if not perhaps even a causing factor in many chronic diseases, including arthritis, cancer, asthma, diabetes, and heart disease. And of course, chronic stress can lead to a decrease in our mental health overall, as well as anxiety and depression. So we see how chronic stress is not just something that's not fun, but it's not good for our health. It can, in fact, even lead to chronic disease, and it's certainly not good for our productivity and our mental health or sense of inspiration at work either. However, there's good news. So there is basically what we could consider the opposite to the stress response, which we could call the relaxation response. And this is a term that was coined by Dr. Herbert Benson out of Harvard. And what he found is that the relaxation response is essentially opposite to or incompatible with the stress response. So in the relaxation response, we see that the immune system is boosted, memory improves, digestion improves, healing is promoted overall, and mood improves. And in particular, what Dr. Benson researched was how mindfulness practices elicit the relaxation response. So we'll take a look at how that works. So now that we understand first, though, what mindfulness is not, that it's basically the opposite to the stress response or living in that survival mode, that fight or flight response. Now we can start to have a more working definition of what mindfulness is. So as someone, I think it was Anna, mentioned at the beginning, a definition of mindfulness. So one definition of mindfulness could be present-minded, non-judgmental, interoceptive awareness. So that's kind of a pretty definition and some pretty words there, but what does that actually mean? And I love that this ties into our word for the day of observation, because mindfulness is basically our capacity for observation and self-observation or self-awareness, that interoceptive awareness. So mindfulness is simply being present in the moment in a non-judgmental way, meaning not problem solving or trying to fix anything, simply being present and observant in the moment. Mindfulness practices can include meditation, deep breathing, or breath work, sensory awareness, or yoga, as many of you have mentioned, Tai Chi, Qigong, massage, and even acupuncture. What we also find is that mindfulness initiates a mental state that is essentially contrary to stress, boosts the immune system and the body's healing mechanisms, shifts our very neurochemistry, and ultimately brings balance to the systems of our brains and bodies. So does that sound good? Does that sound like something you'd like to learn about and be able to do for yourself? Right. So the question then remains, how does mindfulness do all of that? And so I love this image here. I think this really just explains the physiology and science of mindfulness in a nutshell. This kitten sprawled out, and it says, it may look like I'm doing nothing, but on a cellular level, I'm very busy. And so that can really explain what's going on in mindfulness. I know it can be hard to take time out of our busy day to sit and meditate or do some office yoga stretches or something like that. But really, these practices, although they're very simple, are quite profound in what they do for us. So we'll take a look at that. So what we see immediately begin to happen in a state of relaxation, or when we practice meditation or any mindfulness exercise, is a shift in our neurochemistry. We see that hormones and bio and neurochemicals related to stress decrease. We see cortisol, adrenaline, cholesterol, and those pro-inflammatory chemicals begin to decrease immediately. And we see hormones and chemicals related to relaxation and long-term health and well-being go up, including serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, melatonin. These are the hormones that regulate happiness and mood and sleep and pleasure and feeling good. So literally shifting the chemistry of our brains and bodies immediately. We also see a change in the very structure of our brains. And there's fascinating research out of Harvard and other medical and research institutions showing that meditation and mindfulness can affect the very structure of our brains through something known as neuroplasticity. It used to be thought that our brains developed during childhood and then really couldn't change much throughout our adult lives. But it's actually been found that our brains, just like our muscles, can continue to change and grow and become stronger and denser. In particular, mindfulness practices have been shown to increase density in areas of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, temporoparietal junction, cerebellum, and others. And in particular, these areas of the brain are associated with learning, conditioning, rational decision-making, self-awareness, self-control, emotions, behavior, and homeostasis, and overall that capability for observation and self-awareness. We also see that stress impacts our performance. And so what I wish I could do for you all in sharing mindfulness is eliminate all stressors from your lives. Unfortunately, I can't do that. But what I do hope to be able to do is provide you with some tools and understanding on how you can use mindfulness to bring your experience of stress from the far end of this bell curve, where we see that high and chronic levels of stress lead to anxiety and disorganization and a lack of productivity and performance, and bring that back to the other side of the bell curve where we're at a little more optimal functioning. Stress is a necessary part of life, and that stress response can help to give us energy, get a little bit of adrenaline going to help us experience motivation. So that little bit of stress can actually be experienced in a good way, as it helps us to be more alert and more motivated. But it's when it goes that far end of the bell curve that it becomes not helpful. And so using mindfulness can help to bring us back to that more optimal state. We also see that mindfulness enhances relationships. Research suggests that mindfulness training makes partners happier within their relationship, makes each partner feel more optimistic and relaxed, and makes them feel more accepting of and closer to one another. So this can certainly correlate to spousal or family relationships, but could also apply to workplace relationships as well. What we see overall is that this mindfulness within the workplace translates to a more inspired, optimistic, and cohesive workplace environment. As we learn to communicate more effectively, we become more aware of ourselves and how we react with others. We see this more inspired and optimistic and cohesiveness arise. Additionally, I wanted to add how mindfulness can play a role in leadership and, of course, in public speaking, because I think that's really relevant for our topics today. And as I've been saying, mindfulness overall is enhancing this capacity for observation and self-awareness. And effective leaders are, as defined by Ronald Heifetz out of the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard, he mentions that attention is the currency of leadership. So effective leaders are self-aware, they are focused, connected, and proactive. They're able to understand how their actions and their energy are impacting those around them and to make adjustments as necessary. No one's perfect. So when we become more self-aware, we develop this ability to learn from our own mistakes and to grow and thus share that with others. And this is, of course, really relevant for effective public speakers, that speakers be focused, connected, observant, and self-aware, so that we recognize how what we have to share with others is impacting them and can even adjust. I know you're going to be doing practices on public speaking on the fly, so being able to adjust and adapt as you go is a skill that's developed through mindfulness and is really relevant for public speaking as well. So next, I'd like to share ways in which we can practice mindfulness in our everyday lives. I think these benefits sound pretty good and pretty lofty, right? And we might think, well, how can just meditating for a couple minutes impact my overall health? How can it reverse chronic disease? How can it make me a more effective leader? And what I like to mention is that mindfulness is a practice. So like any other, it's developed over time. Just if you were going to exercise a muscle, you would do that same exercise again and again, and you'd eventually start to see that muscle become bigger and denser. The simple exercise itself might not seem very relevant, but then when you see the results over time, you come to understand how these little things can add up. So we can practice mindfulness in little ways throughout our day, including interacting with family. We can take the time to be present and aware of those interactions rather than multitasking. Even sitting at our desk at work, we can do simple mindfulness practices such as breathing exercise or body scanning techniques. We can practice mindfulness during a class or even during a business meeting. One thing that I love about using breathing exercises and the breath as a tool for mindfulness is that no one would be any more the aware, right? We can't necessarily break into our yoga practice or chanting during a business meeting. But if we simply take deep mindful breaths, which is a really effective mindfulness tool, we can do that at any time. During a meal, we can practice mindful eating. While taking a walk is a great time to be mindful and notice our surroundings and that sensory experience. Even when commuting, of course, with the eyes open, we can do breathing exercises using that found time that we might otherwise just be worrying about our day, for example. Even when practicing personal hygiene, if you're just taking a few minutes in the shower or while brushing your teeth, be mindful of that experience and how it feels and your energy within the moment. So taking that time to become more present and self-aware. So I'll challenge you to also think about when you can practice mindfulness throughout your day. And we'll come into we'll hear some resources. I'll come back to that at the end, but we'll come into our mindfulness exercise now. So before we jump into it, I want to check my time and see if there's any questions. Because we didn't start at exactly a particular time, I'm not exactly sure what my end time is. I know there was someone that was keeping track of time. Can you let me know how we stand on time?
I was told that you have 40 minutes. You're at 18:26 right now.
We're at 18 minutes so far, you said?
Yes.
Great. Okay, perfect. So we're just about halfway through. That's great. So we've got about 20 minutes for our mindfulness exercise. So I saw some questions. I just want to make sure I get to what's my go-to mindfulness practice. So I'm going to answer this in a couple ways. First of all, we're going to have about 20 minutes here for this practice. So we're going to have a nice amount of time to really kind of dive into a little practice here. We'll do some mindful breathing, some body scanning, and relaxation techniques. I personally love yoga when I have time for it. And whether it's just a few minutes to stretch during the day or getting to go do an hour and a half yoga class is one of my favorite. I'm a yoga instructor also personally. However, as a busy working mom of 3, I find the best way to practice mindfulness is just on the go, as I mentioned in my previous slide. So the thing that I do the most is probably just feeling into my body, noticing where I'm holding tension, because we do that really without noticing. We might realize like, oh, I was sitting kind of slumped and my shoulders are tight and I'm not breathing deeply. So just noticing the posture and the sensations in my body and bringing it back to the breath and just taking deep, slow breaths. It's that deep, slow breath that's going to oxygenate the brain and thus literally send a message to the brain that we're okay and we can relax, and it's going to trigger that relaxation response throughout the rest of the body. So I'd say my go-to is just like a body scan and deep breathing exercise that I do just really quick multiple times throughout the day. Thanks for that question. So I'm going to bring us into our mindfulness exercise. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can all see me a little better. But please feel free to continue to don't drop any questions during the mindfulness exercise. Let me say that. Let's be completely present with the practice, and then I'll come back to questions when we're done with our exercise. Okay. So with that said, first of all, just bring your awareness to your posture. You're probably seated in a chair. I think most of us are. So just bring your awareness to your posture in your chair and notice that typical posture can be to sit kind of hunched with the shoulders rounding forward. And when we do that, when we sit a little bit hunched, this rounds the back. And then in order to look straight ahead, we have to lift the chin, and this compresses the back of the neck. So when we sit up tall, all of a sudden the neck comes into alignment with the rest of the spine, and we're not cutting off that circulation to the brain, which is going to immediately, if the circulation to the brain is cut off, we're immediately losing our ability to focus. We're losing that supply of oxygen to the brain. So posture is important. It's not just the mom and yoga instructor in me. So we're sitting up kind of tall in our chair with the shoulders relaxed back, the heart space lifted and open, but also relaxed so you can lean back and get comfortable. Let your feet be flat on the floor. And then just go ahead and close your eyes. You can, of course, practice mindfulness or meditation with the eyes open, but we tend to receive a lot of information along the sense of sight. And that can be somewhat distracting. I find it a little easier to practice mindfulness with the eyes closed, as this helps us to bring our awareness back to ourself. And so as your eyes close, further draw your awareness inward, noticing your posture and your position. And if you need to make any further adjustments to your posture, feel free to do so now or at any time during this practice. This is, as I've been saying, essentially a practice in self-observation, paying attention to ourself and the energy within and around ourselves. When we become more self-aware from that platform of connectedness with ourself and the present moment, we're able to then better connect with others from a place of greater balance and presence. So as your awareness continues to draw inward, let it come to land upon the sensation of your breath. And simply notice the breath, the way it knows what to do all on its own. No technique or effort required. Just notice its rise and fall. Notice where you feel the breath and where you feel it and how you feel it move in the body. We'll begin to notice how the breath moves the body as the shoulders rise and fall. The heart, the chest rises and falls. The belly draws in and out. And let that awareness of the breath and the movements in your body bring further awareness to the sensations of your body and to help us relieve any lingering tension or stress in the body. I'll first invite us to just some simple neck and shoulder stretches. So you can keep the eyes closed to maintain that self-awareness, or you can open the eyes if it's easier for you. We're just going to start by rolling the shoulders. Just draw your shoulders into circular motions. Feel that helping to relieve any tension around the neck. And as the shoulders draw back in that circle, feel it opening the space around the heart. We tend to sit hunched. The muscles and the connective tissues across the front of the body and the sternum and around the heart actually can get tighter and shortened, and that will restrict the breath. So as you draw the shoulders in circles, feel that open up the space around the breath. And take those circles in the other direction as well. Good. And then let the shoulders relax. And just now gently stretching your neck. Bring your right ear over towards your right shoulder. And let that stretch along the left side of the neck. So right ear towards right shoulder, stretching the left side of the neck. Deep breath there. Good. And then chin forward towards your chest, still sitting up tall, but the chin draws forward towards your chest, bringing a stretch down the back of your neck, in between the shoulders. Deep breath there. Each time we take a deep breath, that reinforces the message to the brain that we're safe and we're okay, and we can relax a little bit more. And now left ear over towards left shoulder, which will stretch the right side of your neck. Deep breath there. Good, and then head back to center. So that right there was yoga. Yoga literally means to connect or unite, simply connecting the awareness of the mind with the body in the present moment and the breath. Now again, relaxing into your chair, letting the eyes drift back closed if they had opened. Bring the awareness back to your breath. And the sensation of the movement of the breath and your energy through your body. And know that that breath happens not only in your lungs, but from the lungs is shared with your heart. And from the beating of your heart, that breath is shared with every single muscle and cell in your body. So you're quite literally breathing to the tips of your toes and soles of your feet, throughout your arms and legs, and even the mind itself. And so knowing that, we'll take a little bit more time with each breath, as if savoring a bite of your favorite food. Let the breath slow down as it draws in and out through the nose, if that's comfortable for you. Taking plenty of time to fill the lungs completely to brimming with each inhale. Feel that create a little stretch as you inhale deeply and slowly. And equally slowly exhaling through the nose, releasing every last drop of breath. We'll add a little technique to your next breath. As you inhale slowly through the nose, when you reach the top of the inhale, take an extra sip or two of air, really filling the lungs all the way to brimming. And then as you exhale equally slowly out through the nose, at the end of your exhale, draw your belly in towards your spine, engaging the abs slightly as if squeezing a sponge, and feel that wring out the last few drops of breath. And make way for the next inhale. Good. So that technique of stretching the breath to its fullest helps to reawaken and revitalize the breath and the respiratory system, flushing us with fresh oxygen. Knowing that that breath moves throughout the entire mind, and body. Let's let the awareness of our mind follow the path and flow of our breath. First, bringing our awareness down to the soles of our feet and tips of our toes. And give a little wiggle to your toes. Feel that movement in your feet. And know that that energy is made possible by the oxygen carried to your feet into the cells and muscles from your breath. So when you feel that movement and energy in your toes, it's as if you're feeling the flow of the breath through that part of the body. And now relax your toes and feet, let them be still. And notice what it's like to experience stillness. The soles of your feet, the foundation of your being. And then let your awareness now draw up from the feet past the ankles, your shins and calves, past your knees and to your thighs. Bring a little movement to your legs, slowly, gently walking your legs in place. Notice what it's like to experience the flow of energy through your legs and the bottom half of your body. And then let your legs be completely still. As you continue to breathe deeply, fully and slowly, notice what it's like to experience stillness through the legs and the lower half of your body. And now let your awareness and the breath draw up from the legs, past your hips, to your belly and lower back. And bring a little energy to your core by drawing your belly again towards your spine, as if doing the very beginning of a sit-up. Notice what it's like to hold that energy at your core. It can be a little harder to breathe deeply. And now let that go. Completely relax your belly and your lower back. And as you release all effort, you'll still notice the flow of energy. More gentle now, as the breath moves freely through your core. And the belly rises and falls with each breath. And let your awareness now draw up from the belly to the space of your heart, upper back and shoulders, and even your arms and the palms of your hands. Bring a little energy there, scrunching your shoulders up towards your ears and bringing your hands, balling your hands into fists. Notice what it's like to feel that energy intensify around the heart space, in the neck and shoulders. And now let that relax, completely relax your shoulders, the space around your heart and your arms and the palms of your hands. Notice how when we open the energy and the space around our hearts, our arms and our hands open as if to give or receive of energy, connection, compassion, or even love. Breathe deeply into that as you feel the freedom, the space of your heart and shoulders to rise and fall with each breath, unrestricted. And now let your awareness and the breath draw up to the mind itself and bring a little energy there, as if concentrating very hard. Furrow your expression into one of concentration as your brow furrows and your lips purse tight, noticing what it's like to concentrate deeply, to have that sense of increased energy through the mind. And now let that go. As if the mind too were a muscle that could simply relax like all the others. Release all effort through the mind. Let your facial expression relax into one of ease and restfulness as you breathe deeply and easily. And just as when we released effort through the belly, the core, and the shoulders, we felt that sense of relaxation. There was still movement. We noticed the flow of the breath. So too with the mind, when we release effort, it's not that the mind will be completely still. We'll notice thoughts as they drift by, or sensations in the body, noises in the space around us. But there's no need to cling to any thought or sensation, but rather simply observe. Take a back seat and just watch your sensations, your thoughts drift by, and observe the flow of your breath as your awareness simply floats on the wave of your breath and the sensations and experiences of this moment just now. Good. And as you're ready, slowly bring movement to fingers and toes. Just in a small way, noticing that shift of your energy. And then let those movements become bigger as you stretch your arms and legs and slowly open your eyes. Take even the sights of this space, the space around you, let that come to you gently, just noticing. And as you sit up tall, take a deep breath. Let's do a cleansing breath together. I love this for just helping to rebalance your energy, to wake up a little bit, but also to release tension. So we'll do this one actually through the mouth. And so let's all do it together, okay? So we're going to inhale and yawn and stretch your jaw wide. And exhale with a sigh of relief. Notice how that feels. Let's do it one more time together. Inhale, yawn. Exhale, sigh. And I notice a immediate sense of being refreshed and releasing any stress or tension when I do that. So I thank you all so much for sharing in this practice. That was at least 20 minutes or so. But if you have just a minute or two during your day, I highly recommend just either bringing your awareness back to your breath, noticing if there's tension in the body, maybe doing that cleansing breath. I think I have just a couple minutes left, so I'd love to open it up to any questions at all, whether you want to put that in the chat box or take yourself off mute. Let's see, I have one. Is there a maximum time for which you should practice mindfulness daily? So I really think it depends, but most importantly is that you be consistent. As with any skill that you want to develop, consistency is really key. So most important though is that I think you find a way to do it that works for you. I noticed, for example, with my yoga practice, that if I practice for about an hour a day, I maintain. So I maintain my level of flexibility or my strength. If I practice more than that, then I meant to say for an hour a week. If I do yoga for an hour, just once a week, I'll maintain. If I do it every day, I'll see an increase. I'll actually see greater flexibility, greater strength. So I think that similarly with mindfulness, if you did an hour once a week, that's great. But if you want to split that up and just do 10 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, I think that you'll start to see some greater sense of self-awareness and observation. But I think more than that, you're really going to see growth. So I would recommend at least 10 minutes a day or an hour a week. Let's see what other questions. Stephanie mentioned at the beginning of her breathing exercise, she felt like the breath was stuck in the throat. There was a blockage, but she liked watching the breath, which made the blockage feel smaller. Is that strange to have a blockage? Absolutely not. Tension and stress literally creates tightness in the body, which can restrict the breath. But just by paying attention to something, it begins to resolve. So as you watched your breath, it made sense that that started to release. Lori mentions doing a similar exercise when lying down. It's great. Jackie mentioned, I can breathe and do body scans, but my mind still races. What should I do? So absolutely, it's a practice. That's fine and totally normal to notice the mind still racing at first. But finding something that works for you can really help. So if you find that if you try to sit still and meditate, but the mind still races, then maybe a different form of mindfulness, such as yoga or mindful movement. When you move the body, the brain kind of has to pay more attention. So it acts like a stronger anchor. And which can help keep the mind from wandering. So try different mindfulness exercises if you feel that your mind is still racing, if you try like just a seated still meditation. So I hope that's helpful, Jackie. I think I'm just about at the end of my time. Happy to take any other questions. Christina mentioned it's hard to sometimes sit in silent meditation, but yoga really helps. And yoga is just a form of moving meditation is all it is. So. Well, I don't want to go over, so happy to take any other questions, but want to respect our time. So thank you guys so much. I hope you find this helpful. Let me bring it back to our resources just as we end. And I know that you will have access to this, this talk. I think it's going to be posted on your site. So some great resources are, my organization online is the mindfulnesscenter.org. We have daily live Zoom classes in yoga, meditation, and others like Tai Chi. We just launched a program called the Introduction to Meditation Online, which teaches you to meditate in 1 week. We offer telehealth services. We have charitable programs helping bringing wellness to groups in need, as well as professional trainings and CEUs, including yoga teacher training, meditation teacher training, and continuing education credits for mental health workers as well. And our founder, Dr. Norris, her book is In the Flow, Bridging the Science and Practice of Mindfulness. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate being able to participate in your program today. Thank you.
Jessie, wow, thank you so much. That was so powerful. And if there are any ladies there that didn't think you had access to what mindfulness or meditation was, you just experienced it today. So thank you so much for bringing us into that space. We really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.